Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is a new Spider-Man film, except this time it is animated by Sony Pictures Animation. It is produced by Phil Lord and Chris Miller and directed by 3 other people. And this film focuses on Miles Morales. He's a teenager in New York City. He's going to this very advanced upper-class school, and he doesn't really feel like he belongs there. He's having some identity issues of his own, but then one day he gets bitten by a radioactive spider, and he also stumbles upon Kingpin doing something very nefarious with this dimension machine that brings a bunch of other spider people into his own dimension, and now these spider people have to team up to take down Kingpin and get back to their respective dimensions. I was actually really interested in this film after finding out that Phil Lord and Chris Miller were going to be involved. There's some of my favorite creative talents out there right now, so of course anything with their name on it I'm interested in. And as soon as I saw that first teaser trailer from like last year, I knew this movie is gonna be something really special. Like this is going to be different than a lot of other films that we've gotten, so I've been really hyped for this film for quite a long time. A lot of the positive reception got me even more hyped, and I still walked out of this film blown away. I fell in love with this movie quite instantly. This is fantastic. Easily the best animated film of this entire year. And also, I'd honestly go as far as to say this might be my favorite Spider-Man movie ever made. Now, I do need to rewatch, like, at least the first 2 Sam Raimi films before I, declare this, officially. But right now, my feelings for Into the Spider-Verse are, so strong that I'm willing to go that far. This movie is so well made, especially from a character point of view. Miles Morales, he is such a good character, played excellently by Shameik Moore. As I said earlier, this character is going through some identity issues of his own, not really sure what he wants to be in his life, if he even fits in. And as soon as he starts to get these Spider-Man powers that are so out of this world, he also starts to question himself even more. And his character really captures the true spirit of Spider-Man. He's just a teenager who's got a lot going on, and at the same time, in his personal life, he's got to juggle being Spider-Man. He's got to learn how to be Spider-Man. He's got to become the hero that everyone expects him to be. And his character just goes on such a fantastic journey that a lot of people are probably worried, well, there's so many different Spider people in this movie, is it just gonna feel overcrowded? No, you never forget that this is Miles Morales' movie. This is definitely his own adventure, his own story. He is the main character, he's the star, and he's excellently well realized. This is also one of my favorite portrayals of the character of Peter Parker, played by Jake Johnson in this film. This movie actually takes a very interesting direction with the character, very different than what we're really used to, and that was really interesting to see how this Spider-Man kind of differentiated from what we already know of him as. And it was a very great dynamic between him and Miles Morales, as far as him needing to be the teacher for Miles, but he never really feels up to par to that because of his own personal issues. This film is surprisingly really relatable, which of course is one of the strong suits about Spider-Man for a lot of people, is that you can connect to him, and that is definitely very true with this film. I also really like Miles Morales' interaction with Gwen Stacy, voiced by Haley Steinfeld. They had a really good thing going on with their characters, and I really liked how they interacted. I also really liked the Kingpin in this film. Of course, no Kingpin will ever top Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin, that's just a fact. Vincent D'Onofrio was born to play that role, so kind of obvious. But in this film, they actually really do capture the spirit of Kingpin's character, even though this movie is rated PG. That kind of goes to show you that you don't need to go full R for Kingpin. You can make him PG and make him really work. Even though he's not in the movie a whole lot, because there is some other more important stuff going on with Miles, I still felt satisfied with what they did give me with the Kingpin character. They got the motivation down, they got his dialogue down, and they got some really scary action sequences with him, because they really sized him up big time for this movie. And that's, of course, the biggest thing that everyone's going to be talking about, is the animation style, the character designs. They have a lot of different styles going on, but they all blend together so well. You have Miles Morales and Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker, they all kind of look the same, and then you have Spider-Man Noir, voiced by Nicolas Cage, who is very funny character, but he's obviously colored in black and white, and yet he's still able to interact with this very colorful world very well, and it doesn't feel jarring at all. Penny Parker, the anime girl who has a Spider-Man robot as her best friend, she was also very good. Character-wise, she's very funny, but also when it comes to the action sequences in this, they can't animate her exactly like everyone else because she is so different, because she's the anime one. So the way they kind of handled her, blending in her animation with everything else, it was a perfect blend. Also, Peter Porker, Spider-Ham, voiced by John Mulaney, he was really funny, a very great comedic character that didn't get on my nerves. Surprisingly, they used him very perfectly. He wasn't there to the point of annoyance, but he also wasn't there to the point where you're like, well, now I'm kind of forgetting you. Like, he was there for the perfect amount of time, but also his animation style, more Saturday morning cartoon Looney Tunes, and that also fit in very well, and that also, his animation style also offered to some other funny jokes in the film. As I've said before, this movie is very funny. Like, it's such a funny movie. It's so comedically perfect. Of course, Phil Lord and Chris Miller touch right there since they're the producers, but what I also love about their projects, which definitely shines here, is that there is also an emotional attachment that you can get. Like, for example, Miles' family dynamic with his father, played by Brian Tyree Henry, that was so well realized. It goes to some very interesting places that, honestly, I wasn't really expecting them to do in this film, but they did, and it was very well handled. You got attached to these characters, you understood their emotions, and certain emotional beats that happen, you're like, that's good. That works so naturally with everything else. It fits so well with the tone of the movie, and it also fits in well with the overall theme of this film, what you're going for. It just, everything about this movie works to a T. And speaking of surprises, there's also a couple characters that show up. I can't go into any spoilers or anything because they've actually done a good job marketing-wise cutting it out, but there's a couple appearances made where I was like, hey, I recognize that voice. Like, I know who that is. Like, oh, I didn't know it was this character, you know? So this movie still also has a couple of surprises up its sleeve for you that they won't show in any of the marketing or anything. Speaking of which, stick around for the post-credit scene of this film. Very end, it's so funny, and it actually incorporates a very famous thing about Spider-Man, recently at least, and I loved it. It was like comedic genius, man. It was so great, and the person they got for it, like, perfect. I honestly don't have any issues with this movie. I thought every character was well realized when it comes to their humor, but also their emotional beats as well when it comes to them interacting with each other, the blending of their different animation styles, the animation in general. This New York is so beautiful to look at. This is such a unique animated film that I hope to see more of. There's been recent talk of them making sequels to this, or a Gwen Stacy spinoff. I'd be all for it. I'd love to see an animated film like this very soon. The villains all work, they're very threatening, and the action sequences they have here, visually stunning, so frenetic and fast-paced, but I loved it. It's such a well-animated film. Everything was just so well-timed and well-choreographed. The soundtrack that they have for this movie also works. It doesn't feel jarring or anything. It fits exactly what they're going for. The comedy is there, the emotional beats are there. This movie is just everything that I wanted in a Spider-Man movie, a comic book movie, an animated movie, but also just a movie in general. I have no flaws with this film. In my eyes, they did everything right and more than that. I'm gonna give Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse an A+. It is so well done. It is much better than I expected, and I was already extremely hyped for this film. The characters are all so great. Miles Morales is one of my favorite characters of the year, to be honest. I was able to relate to him so much, and I'm sure a lot of people who go see this movie will be able to relate to him too, no matter what age you are. You also get really invested with the character-driven parts of this movie, but also the comedic parts of this film. It's one of the funniest movies to be made this year. Very great screenplay, very great direction, animation style, just so much to love about this movie. I could go on and on and on, but I'll just leave it at that. You need to go experience this film for yourself. But if you've already seen Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, leave in the comments below what you thought of it. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.